Most of us don't decide to check our phones. We just do it hundreds of times a day, even when we don't want to. Why? Somewhere along the way, our attention became disrupted, not because life got harder, but because our phones got smarter. Today, we're going deep, not into opinions, but into scientific evidence to understand why our phones feel addictive and how this habit may be quietly limiting our ability to grow, to focus, and to truly thrive. What is social media addiction? When scientists talk about social media addiction, they're not just talking about spending too much time online. They're talking about a specific psychological pattern. One of the most widely used tools to study this behavior is called the Bergen Social Media Addiction Scale, or BSMAS, developed by researchers at the University of Bergen in Norway. This scale isn't complicated. It's a short self-report questionnaire, but it's based on decades of addiction research. It looks at 6 key experiences. First, preoccupation, constantly thinking about social media, even when you're not using it. Second, tolerance, needing more time online to feel the same satisfaction as before. Third, mood modification, using social media to change how you feel, to escape, to numb, or to feel better. Fourth, withdrawal, feeling restless, irritated, or uncomfortable when you can't check your phone. Fifth, conflict, when social media starts interfering with your work, your studies, or your relationships. And finally, relapse, trying to cut back, but repeatedly failing to do so. Researchers explain that when someone scores high across these 6 areas, it's not just heavy use anymore. It's considered problematic or addictive behavior. Why we keep checking our phones. One strong predictor is something called attachment style. Basically, how safe or unsafe we feel when it comes to connection, approval, and rejection. Studies show that people who seek reassurance, validation, or emotional comfort are more likely to turn to social media. Why? Because these platforms offer powerful psychological rewards. They give us social validation. They create short, repeated feedback loops. And they provide constant emotional stimulation. Over time, this creates a cycle. The more we use it, the more we rely on it emotionally, and the more difficult it becomes to step away. Impact on self-growth and daily life. So what happens when this pattern continues? Research shows that heavy social media use is linked to reduced self-control. It becomes harder to stay focused, harder to regulate impulses, harder to stay with one task for long. Studies also show lower engagement in meaningful activities, especially when anxiety or social pressure is involved. And emotionally, higher levels of social media addiction are associated with lower self-esteem and higher depressive symptoms. So this isn't just about distraction. It shapes how we see ourselves and how we feel about our lives. Why it's so hard to quit. Part of the reason quitting feels so difficult has to do with the brain's reward system. Every notification, every like, every message triggers a small dopamine response. These are tiny rewards, but they arrive fast and often unpredictably. Over time, the brain learns to expect this speed. It starts preferring quick rewards over slow ones. So things that require patience, reading, deep thinking, building skills, or working toward long-term goals begin to feel less satisfying by comparison. Without realizing it, we train our brains for short bursts of gratification. and that slowly reshapes our attention and our motivation. What this means for self-growth. When attention is constantly pulled outward, when self-esteem is quietly affected, and when motivation is redirected toward quick digital rewards, real self-growth becomes harder. You may want to grow. You may want clarity. You may want depth. But the same systems we rely on every day are training our minds for distraction. That's the paradox. We use our phones to feel connected, yet the patterns they reinforce can limit focus, resilience, self-confidence, and deeper transformation. Conclusion: understanding why we struggle to quit isn't about blame, it's about awareness. It's about seeing the system shaping us, often without our consent. And that awareness is the first step toward real freedom. So if you want to think beyond the scroll, ask yourself gently, is this habit serving my growth or quietly masking it?